Stephen Waterhouse. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Orchid. Been in this crypto game for quite a while, since 2013, and I co-founded Pantera Capital back then. I also work as a venture partner at Fabric in Europe, and like to collect NFTs and just generally play with anything interesting that comes along in the space. I'm excited to be at ETHDenver for the second time. 2 years ago was the beginning of COVID. I think a few weeks later I was holed up in bed in San Francisco and recovering from an early case of COVID. Happy to be here without COVID and enjoying, I think, a 5 times bigger event now, so it's really excited to be here. What do I do? Well, I'm the CEO, so I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. I guess I kind of make sure that the trains run on time. But as a co-founder, so my other co-founders, myself, especially Jay Freeman, my CTO at the team, worked on this idea back then, coming on like 4 years ago, the idea that building a more private network for communications would be an interesting idea, especially given the concept of decentralized networks and cryptocurrency. What Orchid does is it improves upon the basic VPN experience and allows you to string together multiple different VPN providers, all of which are paid using cryptocurrency. We run on the Ethereum family of networks, the EVM compatible chains. So originally we were on only Ethereum, and now we use some of the new layer 2, very fast, very cheap kind of combinations there. We allow some innovations on basic VPN experience. We have applications for Android and iOS devices and also desktops, allow you to pay either with cryptocurrency or using in-app payments and pay as you go. So instead of signing up for a subscription and giving all the information, you can just pay $1 and connect for as long as you need to. Yeah, it sort of seemed pretty obvious at the time. I was kind of surprised someone else hadn't really tried it, and certainly around that period of time also many other people had another kind of different experiments were run in that space. The basic observation was that with Bitcoin originally there's this concept of decentralizing a specific centralized point of control. In the case of Bitcoin, it's the centralized point of control of banks and governments issuing money and controlling who you can send money to and so on. With Ethereum, you get this decentralized system where you're breaking up the centralized point of control of initially, for example, venture funding. So the ICO platforms allow people to democratize the process of funding projects. Our observation was that communication systems are very specifically controlled by many different central organizations across the world, whether it's governments or ISPs or cell phone networks, etc. And so their ability to censor those, which is dramatic in certain parts of the world. For example, in China, large portions of the internet are censored, things that we would consider normal, depending on what the ruling party decides you're allowed to see and not allowed to see. And so the concept of building a system where a particular, one particular VPN company couldn't be censored because they could be censored, but not all of them can be censored. And also the way that the traffic is constructed in our system, because there are multiple nodes in the network, means that it's much, much harder to censor traffic that goes through our network. And in terms of why cryptocurrency, well, first of all, it means that you don't have to sign up with a credit card and your billing address and all the other kind of KYC information that people require now I needed to go buy coffee. I've got like KYC in the coffee shops. It's like everywhere now. So our idea was using cryptocurrency, we remove or make that less of an onerous thing. And also it allows us to scale the number of providers to an arbitrary number without having to set up separate billing arrangements with everybody. So it was in 2013. I'm from the UK, but I lived in San Francisco for 20 years. And I'd worked in decentralized networks in the early 2000s in the peer-to-peer space, building like decentralized search engines, and I worked with some of the file-sharing music companies. So the idea when I came across Bitcoin made a lot of sense in terms of the decentralized concept was very much part of what I believe would make sense in the world. I was at Fortress after doing some work in venture capital space there, and I was chatting to the guys who run Fortress, and we sort of started bouncing ideas around, and I was talking to friends, and one friend introduced me to Bitcoin. A few months later, we at Fortress funded Pantera Capital, and I joined as one of the initial partners there. So I was on the board of Bitstamp for 3 years, and did investments in things like Zcash, which is based out of Denver somewhat, Shapeshift also, and kind of really got very early into connecting into lots of very interesting people. And then in 2017, came up with the idea for Orchid, started that. I moved to Lisbon recently, so kind of jumping around, decentralizing myself. And now also working with Fabric Ventures as a venture partner and doing my own investments. It's a fascinating time to be in the space. It feels like over the last 9 years it's been fascinating, always at different times. What's exciting now to me is seeing a lot of very smart new people entering the space and thinking about how to really apply this to kind of mass adoption scenarios, things like in-app play-to-earn gaming, just NFT disrupting the existing art space. I think is fascinating. I think that concepts that we've been working on at Orchid in terms of decentralized services and networking will be very important to the potential reshaping of the existing consumer space that we see, and also business case, of course, which is traditionally now, especially over time, has become concentrated into a small number of entities, whether it's Facebook or Apple or Google and so on, and all the different acronyms of FANGs and so on. Those business models really make sense because it makes sense to aggregate lots of data, it makes sense to aggregate services and products into one entity. I think that the beauty of these decentralized architectures is that you can see this explosion of lots of different services. If we take, for example, DeFi today, certainly there are some major platforms like Curve and Uniswap and Aave and so on, Compound, but there are also hundreds, if not thousands, of different DeFi platforms and little pieces of DeFi Lego that have been built by small teams that are not on a path to being acquired or coalesced into a single monolithic entity that then will ultimately, whether it's decentralized by name, will ultimately not be decentralized, it'll be controlled. And I think that's exciting, and I'd like to see that play out into other parts of the spaces, such as the decentralized networks and services that we're building. Well, I'm giving a talk tomorrow, which is called the CryptoPunk Ethos, and it's not a talk about NFTs, although I'd be very happy to talk about NFTs. It's fascinating, but it's really somewhat of a reaction to what I've seen a number of times now, and is obviously it gets bigger, the effect gets bigger, which is as we kind of march up, whether it's like the price action curve or the adoption curve or like just the energy in the room curve, we can quite easily forget why we're here. What's the point of all this stuff? Like, what's the interesting innovation? And to me, the interesting innovation is that we're building on decentralized open networks, decentralized open platforms. The code is open source. It's hopefully decentralized by design. And so then you ask yourself the question, well, what is the point of these decentralized systems? And to me, the point is to disrupt these centralized points of control and to build brand new, innovative applications using these systems. There are many examples, I don't need to call them out by name, of platforms which are decentralized by name, but a simple tweak, and you can make it very clear that it's not actually decentralized, whether it's stopping transactions, it's something that you can do. I was like, oh, hang on a second, this tether that was stolen here, we're going to censor that and move it. It's like, oh wow, I kind of guess that's a good idea because maybe that was my tether, but on the other hand, that's not decentralized, because if you can do it, then someone you don't like can also do it. And this kind of battle between control and freedom is a difficult line to walk, because sometimes it can mean that things happen which we don't like, but in order to preserve the concept that we are trying to build an open system, we need to kind of keep going back to that question and ask ourselves, why are we doing these things? That I like the best. So I went very deep into algorithmic art in the last 9 months or so. So initially I started collecting, kind of some of the more well-known PFPs. But then I dug very deep into the Artblocks platform and GenArt and Null and various different platforms. So I think that's sort of my favorite stuff. I managed to pick up a ringer by Dimitri Cherniak a few months ago, so I like that a lot. Bien sûr, je parle français très bien. Ma mère était une professeure de français en Angleterre.
On aurait pu faire l'interview en français en fait.
Ah oui, bien sûr. Bienvenue à ETHDenver, tout le monde.